Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, a whole bunch of places, and if you look for us, you can find us. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my first two guests, and they are Suzanne Fisher and Ruth Planey. And Suzanne and Ruth, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. So that's Suzanne and Ruth with us. And it's a really good show today. Not that every week's not a good show, but I'm really glad you two are with me today because what you're talking about is so current and so contemporary, and I think we all need to hear it. Suzanne joined the League of Women Voters in 2018. Followed by becoming a board member in 2019 and later as president of the organization. She also is the head of the National Popular Vote Action Team, and she moved to the area outside of Black Mountain from Washington, D.C. Ruth and her husband moved to Weeville in 2003 from Southern California. She joined the League in 2021 wanting to do something that would make a bigger impact on the lives of more people. And so I guess the first question I ask you both is, I just mentioned that Ruth moved from California, and Suzanne, so did you grow up in the Washington, D.C. area, Suzanne?
No, I grew up in Minnesota and Illinois.
Okay, so the question, I'll ask Ruth the same question as well, but when you were a young woman growing up where you did you always know you wanted to become involved with the League of Women Voters?
No, and I actually grew up in the DC area. I grew
Oh.
up mostly in Maryland and Virginia when I was a
Okay.
kid.
Just in reverse.
No,
But Suzanne, so when did you first want to become involved with the League of Women Voters?
Well, I certainly knew about them. I'm not a legacy. My mother wasn't involved. And I do recall, I was listening to an NPR broadcast driving around, and they were talking about a study that the Charlotte-Mecklenburg League did here about the quality, and actually they found the lack of quality in some charter schools. And you might wonder, well, what does that have to do with the league? Well, having an informed citizenship, making sure that all citizens, all people who are going to vote someday get a good education is very important. So, I mean, the league's main focus is empowering voters, defending democracy. It's getting people to vote, but it's also informing them about, so that they can make an informed choice. I saw a cute thing somebody put up the other day. They said, your ballot is not a pop quiz. You need to do your homework first. Some people are so clever. But so I just, after I had lived here a while and I was involved in some things, and like Ruth, I was looking to do something that was going to impact more people. Before the pandemic, and I hope to get back, I was doing tours at the Thomas Wolfe Memorial, but I wanted to have a different aspect to some of my volunteer activities. And the league, you just feel like, I've just made so many friends, and you get involved in so many things, and learned a lot.
So you became involved, just a couple of years ago as well?
Yeah, about 4 years ago.
Okay. And then, I don't want to scare Ruth off, but, we heard Suzanne's growth in terms of the organization. So this looks like what you're going to have to do as well. You become involved, and they're going to get you become president and become involved in all sorts of other organizations as well. But with the same question, so I knew you. I've known you for several years, and I've always had the pleasure of seeing you entertain lots of people as a performer, actor, singer, whatever. How did you get involved then in a League of Women Voters?
Well, like you said, yes, I've done a lot of different entertaining kind of things, and have volunteered a lot. My parents were big volunteers, and my dad was political. My mother wasn't. But during the pandemic, I don't know what it was. I just felt like I was vegetating or something. I knew I was doing good for the community, but I just wanted to, like I said, do something that was bigger, had a bigger impact, more important impact on more people. And the national popular vote is something that I didn't realize anybody was working on. I just thought it was me by myself going, well, why doesn't the person that gets the most votes win? And then I found the league, and it was like, oh, yay, there's actually people that are working on this. I found a home.
So how do you find the home specifically with respect to League of Women Voters? You read about it, or you went to a meeting, or what happened?
I just went, well, by then we were doing Zoom, so I went to a Zoom meeting and learned that they had the national popular vote, and I said, Suzanne, I want to work on that.
Okay. And you mentioned, and we'll go to Suzanne on this as well, but you mentioned the popular vote. So is that something the League of Women Voters is concerned with?
Yes, that is something. In fact, I was at the League of Women Voters U.S. convention this past summer in June, and those of us, and the national popular vote was one of the things, and I was very active with other people getting the league to make a commitment to it. And it's a two-pronged commitment, and it's probably the subject of a whole nother podcast. But what the league is now going to be pushing, especially after the election, is direct election of the president. The national popular vote is an interim step to ultimately abolishing the electoral college, but that takes a constitutional amendment, and we know how hard those are. So we have an interim step in mind.
So,
And the league is fully supportive of that,
oh, just a popular vote for president.
of both aspects. Yes,
And do you think that'll happen in our lifetime?
I do.
Really?
I do.
Okay, very exciting. Because you talk about it, but I don't know if we'll ever see it. But aside from working on this issue, Suzanne, League of Women Voters does lots of other things as well. And talk a little bit about some of the things, especially working up toward the upcoming election.
Sure. And our Asheville Buncombe chapter, which is not a small chapter, but sort of a medium-sized chapter, we focus our efforts on what I really see are the core aspects of the League of Women Voters, which is, empowering voters. Your vote is your voice is one of the things we like to say a lot. So it gets involved in a lot of things. Right now, we're doing a lot of voter registration and voter education. If people are registered, then we ask them, have you moved since the last election? And if they have, remind them that they have to update their information for that. We do voter registration in the high schools because, of course, 18-year-olds can vote. So we're doing a lot of that. Vote 411 is where we invite candidates for state and federal offices to respond to a series of questions. And then we have that up on a website that's accessible on any media, on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop. Quite a bit of it is in Spanish. On our website, lwvab.org, we have the basic voter information in both English and Spanish, so we're trying to reach as many groups as possible. Other aspects that we're monitoring the Board of Education meetings in 3 different counties, in Buncombe, McDowell, and Madison. Our name is Asheville Buncombe County, and that goes back to when it was founded, but we actually have members. I live in McDowell County. We have members in Madison County and other counties around here. There's another very active league in Henderson County, so they've got that part and kind of to the south covered. But we're really a broader group than our name might imply. We get involved in redistricting. Prior to that, of course, every 10 years in the census. So we're involved in a lot of different things.
Now, when you talk about being involved in it, the name itself, it's a League of Women Voters, helps all voters, not just women voters.
Right.
But I was just wondering, the membership, though, is primarily women or exclusively women?
It's not exclusively women. We have men. We have a number of people that have household memberships. Mine is one. My husband is we're joint members. He gets involved in different things, whether he wants to or not. When we put up the marker at the Patton Parker House, he and another league spouse did the concrete work for that. So that was good. But no, the league goes back to 1920, and it was formed just before women finally won the right to vote. And it was formed with the idea of educating this new group of voters, potentially half the voters, educating them, facilitating them getting to the polling places. Surprisingly, early on, elections were not always held in places that women would necessarily want to go to, and maybe they'd want, a saloon, a barber shop, things like that. So just getting women, comfortable with the idea. It was in the 1970s, kind of about the same time that a lot of single-sex colleges admitted the other side. The league allowed men to be members, and we don't have a man on our board, but we have several men who are quite active, and there are men on boards at the local, state, and national level as well. But it is primarily a women's organization.
Ruth,
So it is co-ed, and it is nonpartisan. So
fiercely nonpartisan.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking out loud, folks, that other organizations, I'm just trying to think of similar ones that have switched from just being all women, or I guess all men, to even changing the name. Some down the road, I wouldn't be surprised if, we have a League of Women or League of Voters, because it seemed to do such good work that everybody should benefit from it.
Well, and we hope they do, but I would be a little surprised if that happens. The connection to the suffragists is still strong, and because we're still fighting those battles. I mean, we're still, the ERA is another, and ERA and gender equity, reproductive health. There are still a lot of issues. Maybe when women are in the same as men and things like that, we'll think about it. But I think there are still issues that we're working on from a female perspective, and have allies who want to help us.
And earn the same amount of money too would be kind of nice, if in our lifetime that ever happens. Talk about educating folks in Asheville, Buncombe County. So what are the things you're doing now as we're approaching an election? Election's coming up in a month. What are you doing to inform folks about voting?
We're doing a lot of things. I just had to do a report. We had 26 different voter registration, voter information tables at all kinds of events in September, in just that month. We've been at tailgate markets, at the YMCA markets, the Asheville Arts Council, just any libraries. As I said, we're schools, and we're going to be doing more schools, anywhere that we can, in sort of a neutral place that we can have our information. We just need a place for a good sized table and our information to hand out to people. We have a pretty active website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We put up a lot of information there. Some of it we generate, some of it we share from others. We've done other, we did one other interview with someone. We try to get letters to the editor. We just try to reach people in any way we can.
In terms of the information going out, I know in some areas, even nationally, League of Women Voters sponsored debates or forums. Do you folks do any of that?
We don't. They have done it in the past. As I said, the League is fiercely nonpartisan. We are political. We advocate for things, but we do not endorse candidates nor tell people not to vote for a candidate. We are strictly nonpartisan. And one of the rules for the League is if you have a debate or a forum, both of the major parties have to be represented. You can't have what some people call an empty chair debate. So if you can't get both of them to agree, or you get it set up and then somebody doesn't show up, then you effectively have to cancel that forum. And right about the time I was joining, they had a couple experiences like that, people showed up and they said, I'm sorry, we're not going to go forward. And so it was decided that it was a lot of work to get it set up, to find the venue, that was not the best way we could spend our time and effort. And of course, now with COVID and all that too, it's a little tricky still.
Yeah, jump in, Ruth. Yeah.
Oh, well, so other organizations have different rules, but the League is, yes, everybody has to show up in order to have a debate so that it's even. So when Suzanne and I did the thing at Diana Wortham with the Arts Council for the state candidates, maybe only about, what do you think, Suzanne, about half of them showed up?
Yeah.
But it wasn't our venue, so they could go ahead and have their question and answer debate, information thing. So what the League does instead has on our Vote 411 website, the candidates that have answered the questions, their answers are down there, and if they haven't, then it's just blank. But we don't tell people who to vote and who not to vote for. The information is there. You make your decision.
So I was going to ask you, in that information you put together in the past, I found very helpful, that's open then, so if they choose not to answer it, you'll still put out the information. Is that correct?
Well,
Oh, yeah.
if
I
they
mean,
don't
if you
answer,
go,
they don't answer.
if you look at a race now, and maybe there are 4 candidates, maybe all 4 potential parties, for the ones who answer, and it's whatever they send back to us.
Gotcha.
Their picture, if they want to put a link to their website or something. And if someone has chosen not to answer or just hasn't gotten around, because we'll keep taking the information, it'll just be a little shadow with their name and said, did not respond, or I forget
Okay.
the exact words, but no response
No
received or
response,
something
I think
like
is
that.
what I saw the other day. Yeah.
But they have the option to participate if they choose.
We ask everybody. We send out email. I mean, we hound them a little bit too. We'll have people write again, some or call, and at the state and as you get to the more local level, people have varying degrees of a robust campaign. I mean, they may, if you're just running for Black Mountain Mayor or something, you may not have a campaign aide, or it may be pretty much run from your kitchen table. So we realize that people are in different places, but we try to make it pretty easy. And they all have this information, and there are questions that are
Pretty
they're
basic.
not hardball questions.
Yeah.
Talk about
And
the
a lot
question.
of it is, what do you think are your most important priorities and things like that. They're pretty open-ended questions.
But the
Ruth?
411 is an excellent site to go to because it gives you all sorts of information. And then we also tell people about early voting, different ways they can vote.
We'll talk about then that 411. What is that again?
It's Vote 411.
Yeah.
I mean, you just Google that. It is something that the League of Women Voters does nationally. There's obviously a lot of structure and software and all that behind it to get all that information, and all that comes nationally. And then at the state and county level, different leagues then solicit this information from candidates. And I mean, they are sent a link in an email, and it's pretty straightforward to fill in the blanks. But I said going after them. But then it's up there. I mean, you can also find out where your polling place is and what the hours are. I mean, you put in your name and address, and it gives you your specific information, and it's a nationwide effort.
Well, repeat that again because that's really useful information. I was just going to ask you if somebody, for example, wants to find out if they're registered. They think they are. Best bet is to go to that site you just
They
mentioned.
can start from there. It will direct them to the North Carolina site. But yeah, you can just start with Vote 4-1 and navigate from there, rather than,
Right.
I wonder what
Right.
how I find the North Carolina Board of Elections, and I wonder how I find my local Board of Elections. If you start with Vote 411, we will take you to all the places you need to
Okay.
be.
And so if I get taken to the place I need to be, that'll also show me if I'm registered and where to vote?
Mhm.
Okay. Because
And one good thing to know in Buncombe County, and early voting is starting October 20th. In early voting, you can go to any of the early voting polling places, which Buncombe County has quite a few. McDowell, where I live, has 2. When it comes to the election day, which we now call the last chance you get to vote,
right.
your last day to vote, you have to vote at your assigned polling place. So for that, you have to really make sure you've looked up and you go to the assigned polling place that it shows on your voter registration card, or that it will tell you on Vote 411.
I just heard today that the number of people doing early voting is like going crazy, and it's going to continue, exceed, like more people will vote early voting than vote on election day?
Probably right now it's just absentee ballots. Early voting starts October 20th. So right now the absentee ballots, the mail-in ballots that people have done, that's what's going on. But yeah, if it holds for the last 2 elections, more people will vote before than will vote on election day. North Carolina as a state allows those votes to be tabulated in advance. So that's one of the reasons why they won't have revealed it, but they will have put all they will have the numbers in the system. And that's why generally we get our election results pretty fast. The combination of being able to count them early and the majority of them being counted early, we usually don't have to wait too long. Now a close race, we will, but.
Because like you said, I find it incredible that some states still don't allow you to count the votes,
Right.
until election day. It makes no
Some
sense.
states you cannot even open the absentee ballots until election day. Some states are just starting to have early voting. Where my son and daughter-in-law live in Delaware, this is the first time they've had early voting there.
Yeah. Talk also, Suzanne, you mentioned absentee ballots. So
Right.
explain, or who should be getting an absentee ballot?
Anyone can get an absentee ballot. The deadline for getting them is coming up, but anyone can get an absentee ballot. And if you're not sure what your situation is, you can get an absentee ballot and then go on to vote in person. You can't vote both, of course, and they have perfect safeguards to make sure you don't do that. That's not possible in our North Carolina system. But if you're not sure, if you, I think in the times of COVID, a lot of us got absentee ballots, and sometimes we use them and sometimes we decided we felt comfortable going in. But if you are in a child care or family care member, or your work hours are not regular, or you're just not sure if you're going to be able to go, then you can get an absentee ballot. It has to be postmarked by election day.
Mhm.
Ruth, I
Yeah,
think
you need to make the request by November the 1st, and
Yeah,
it has to be mailed by the 8th and received by the 14th.
to vote absentee
postmarked,
ballot.
not mailed, postmarked. Like, remember, did you ever line up to get your tax return postmarked on the last day? You has to be postmarked.
Okay, so that means to be postmarked.
Well, the incredible thing, what you were saying, Suzanne, I think you mentioned it was your son or somebody mentioned, but I remember, I think the last time I voted in person was in Pennsylvania, the Gore-Bush election, and they didn't allow you, in Pennsylvania at the time, you couldn't do early voting. So I had to wait 3.5 hours to vote. I said, never again. And so I don't know why people would oppose to early voting, but I think it's, the greatest thing since cream cheese. You vote at your convenience.
It is, I mean, it's certainly great if you want to. I mean, it is work for the boards of elections and all their people, but it does spread the work out a little more evenly rather than have it. But I mean, and I've listened to some of these. I listened to one of the Buncombe board meetings where they're talking about early voting sites, and there are so many things they have to worry about: parking, they have to worry about ADA requirements, are people accessible? Though you can always, in Buncombe County, you can always vote from your car if you have that need. They have a way that you notify them and they will bring the ballot out to you and things like that. But I mean, there's a lot to think about for early voting. It turns out they also have for those sites and for the general election, they have a backup place. Like, what if the power goes out at a particular polling place, or they have no water or something?
Yeah.
The work that goes into running an election is just amazing.
And talk about it in terms of the work going into the election, back to what you folks do. Do you also help people get smarter about the individual candidates? So if they want to get smarter about the candidates, you can read the statements, I guess, they sent you. Is there anything else they can get from you folks?
If they've submitted their website, that will show up on Vote 411, but we don't talk to people about individual candidates. We put it out there for them to read and make their own decisions. There are other sites and other organizations that actually endorse candidates, so people can seek those out. If you're an environmentalist, you might want to look at some of those sites, but we don't go there. We just get the information.
When you get the information, is it for all the elections or just the major ones?
No, it goes down to in Buncombe County. It goes from the federal senators and representatives to the General Assembly, to the county, to the city, to the Water Commission. I don't believe they vote for dog catcher there. So, but
Well, no.
I mean, I think Water Commission, or I mean, it goes all the way to, it goes to Black Mountain Mayor and Council, which is pretty small. When they're voting in Marion, it goes to that level.
So I appreciate it because, again, I follow politics pretty closely, but I have no idea, like you said, what a commission or even the judges, I don't follow that at all. And it's hard to, keep on top of everything. So that's, I guess, why you have the website and information you can get from you folks as well. If somebody wants to become, they become a member of the League of Women Voters, describe that process and what does membership entail?
Well, you can become a member. You can go to our website again, lwvab.org, and there's a place that I forget if it says be a member or join us or something like that. It's $50 a year. You become a member of our league, of the state league, and the national league, and you get a lot of information from all of them. We have then you can participate in our action groups like the National Popular Vote or the ERA. For voter registration tables, we will take just volunteers, but they do have to go through training. But in general, to be active with the group, we've done some history events. We try to have several all-member meetings. That's been a little tricky the past couple of years, but we're going to have one coming up about Medicare and possible Medicare expansion and things like that. We had one on National Popular Vote. So we have them on different topics. Maybe this year we'll have our annual meeting in person. It's been an interesting time to try and navigate and get people to participate and feel safe.
And so, Ruth, you went through the training. What was that like in
The
terms
training
of? Yeah,
for voter registration?
no, I think I think Suzanne mentioned to become a member. Then there's a 3-hour training process, or what was that about?
No, I think what she was talking about was to work at the voter registration table. You don't need to be a member, but
Okay.
so that you can make sure that you're doing it correctly, then there is a short little training, I would say less than an hour that you do, just so that you can answer people's questions at voter registration.
Now, at the election itself, Suzanne and Ruth, do you come out on election day, or that you allow the parties to?
No, not as League of Women Voters. Many people in the league will volunteer to work at the polls or will be observers or things like that. There are rules. As president, treasurer, and the head of our election services, we're very limited. Other league members can campaign, not as a league member, but on another hat, they can campaign. As we were talking before, there's Susan Fisher, who was our representative in the General Assembly until earlier this year, and she was a league member the whole time. So it's just, you have to be very careful, that you don't wear your league button or identify yourself as doing this on behalf of the league. But league members can be involved in politics, but we're not out there handing out anything on election day or anything like that.
I worked the polls at the last election, not the primary, but the last general election. And yeah, the turnout was real small because most of the people had already voted. And then going back to before we moved here, I just remembered that I did voter registration way back in California like 40 years ago.
What's a shame? Yeah, go ahead,
I
Suzanne.
say there are other organizations, Democracy North Carolina, or usually goes by Democracy NC. They promote a voter protector program where you just basically sit there, and if there is a problem, you report it. But as they say, they hope you will be as bored. So there are other nonpartisan ways people can get involved too. We don't drive people to the polls or anything like that.
How does somebody in Asheville or Buncombe County know that if they vote, their vote's going to be counted and it's going to be done right? Is there a confidence level that people can have?
It's very high, and we've been putting out a lot of information, and we had the Trusted Elections Tour that came through at the end of last month as well. That was sponsored by the Carter Center. The checks and the balances and the double checks are just amazing. I'll just tell you, I went to McDowell County Board of Elections a couple of weeks ago, and they had their first 60-some absentee ballots, and they open them and they look at them and they're very careful. And then when they're ready to run them through the tabulator, they first run it to show that there are no votes in there. Then they put the 62 approved, legally done absentee ballots, and then it counted 62. I mean, it's all double counted. They are barcoded. And that's how they can tell if you get an absentee ballot and vote it, and then you try to go to vote again, it would immediately recognize that you've already voted. The system is very well set up. It looks like you're interfacing with some kind of computer when you put your ballot down and it goes through their tabulator, but that's just basically a scanner, and that gives us a paper record, which is the best way to safeguard your elections, because you can always go back and look at it. And they do a sample audit of paper records versus what was tabulated after the election. But it is not connected to the internet. It's not like, people think, oh, it looks like a computer, they must be able to hack it like my Facebook. No, there is no internet connection involved with our voting machines. It's a standalone process, I guess is the best way I could put it.
It's just my opinion, Suzanne and Ruth, and I'll go back to Ruth. But it's such a shame because this was such a exciting process, for people to vote and for you to help them vote. And then you're reading now, or unfortunately, there's so much contentious nature of happening. It's going to get worse, I think, that rather than saying what you're saying, Suzanne, that's, we're very sure it's a safe, clear election, I think it's terrible to put doubts into people's minds, that 2 years before even a national election, that we're not going to have a legitimate election, that to me isn't a good way to make a better system. It's just a shame. That's just my opinion. Ruth, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was just gonna say, yeah, after working the election that I did, yes, you get X number of ballots. You verify more than one person, and you've got different parties represented. You have to verify how many you got. Then at the end, you have to verify how many were used, how many were left, how many went through the machine. So it's always this constant check, 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 check. And if you're one off, which you wouldn't be because you've been checking this whole time, like every hour you have to write down the numbers and send it in to the Board of Elections. There's kind of like no way you can really screw up, or if you do, you'll catch it really fast and then you'll figure out, oh, well, what was the problem? But there was no problem at the site I worked. There was no problem at the site that my husband worked. I feel very confident with it.
Anyway, Suzanne, if I could just ask you to repeat one more time. If folks want to find out about League of Women Voters, if I can have you take it slowly, the alphabet soup there, what are the letters to check out?
LWVAB.org for League of Women Voters, Asheville Buncombe. LWVAB.
Okay, so it was one great website, and I think equally as valuable was the other website you mentioned. If folks want to find out in general about elections, not just, is that, by the way, nationwide too?
It is nationwide.
And what is that again?
It's won awards.
Yeah, and what
is
that?
Vote, VOTE 411.org.
Good. And if I can just reiterate what you said and support it, to encourage people to check it out, because it is a great website. And like you said, anytime I've needed information, rather than go to 17 different sources, I've just gone there and it tells me everything I need. So it's, whoever's putting that together does a great job. And I want to thank you both too for doing the work you're doing and volunteering it with it. And as Suzanne indicated, if someone who wants to become a member in Asheville Buncombe County, again, just go to that website you mentioned and it'll tell them what they have to do to become a member.
Yep.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you both for the work you're doing, and I appreciate you being our guest on the first half of today's Blaine's World podcast.
Thanks for having us.
I'll see you soon, and Ruth, I look forward to seeing you soon on stage. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Blaine.
Bye-bye.
Okay. As Suzanne and Ruth work their way out of the studio, let's see if I can get them out of the studio. We'll bring in our next guest in just a second, and don't report. Our next guest is coming in. There she is. And as Kelsey Sanders gets all set up, I just want to mention to folks you're watching and listening to the Blaine's World podcast. We're heard each week at least once, sometimes twice or three times on Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it, you can find us. And I should mention that our next guest, first of all, Kelsey, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. And that is Kelsey Sanders. And Kelsey is a certified life coach. Her program, Weightless Weight Loss, was created for women who feel they know what to do but can't seem to make weight loss stick. It's more than weight loss, and we'll talk about that in a second, being a mindful approach to life. Her mission is to teach women how to take their power back and to ditch diet culture drama and experience in true food freedom. And Kelsey, the question I always ask is, in terms of growing up, I know you, I knew you when you were growing up in Asheville, but you actually were from where originally? Was it where you grew up as a kid?
We moved around a bit, but I was born in Washington State, and we lived in California and Montana, and then moved to Asheville when I was in 5th grade. So
Okay.
I was in Asheville.
Okay, I think I knew you shortly after that. And did you know, as a kid growing up all over, and especially in Asheville, did you always know you wanted to be a life coach?
No.
Okay. Do you remember what you wanted to be as a child?
Oh gosh. A few different, as a child, I probably wanted to be a ballet. I did ballet, so I probably wanted to be a dancer. As a little kid, I don't know, lawyer. I went through all the things. I didn't really have one set thing that was calling to me.
So what got you into being a life coach?
So interestingly, I went to college and I was doing advertising and marketing stuff. Right. And after, I'd always had just ups and downs with my weight. And, since college, it was like, do a diet, lose some weight, or just be off the wagon, gaining weight. So really up and down, kind of knew how to reset myself and get me to a place I was mostly comfortable. But after having my second child, and she was born in 2019, and then we had the big, the COVID quarantine year where everything was just wild and you were just eating all day and everything. I reached my highest weight I'd ever weighed, and I realized I needed to find something different than what I had been doing before. And that's how I discovered coaching for weight loss and life coaching. Is I actually found a coach through a podcast I listened to, actually. I started following her, signed up with her, and did her program. And that's like, it was, 2 weeks into her program, I was like, so how do you do what you're doing? Because I kind of like this makes so much sense. It was like all these things just clicked.
Well, and talk about why it made so much sense. What made it different?
So the big thing, in terms of diet culture and diets, and, a lot of us don't even realize how like impacted we are by diet culture, but it's all around us. It's such a big part. And, it's a lot of these diets out there, or just that up and down 80-20, whatever that is, whatever the thing is, so much of it is about treating like the symptom, right? So it's like you're overweight, so eat less and go on a diet and do these things and stop eating these foods and you'll lose weight, right? But the problem is it's not looking at the root cause, and so it doesn't last. And that's the big difference between doing a like deeper dive coaching perspective as opposed to like 30-day whatever, or, I'm not going to have this food for, 60 days and suddenly I'll, lose all the weight. But then eventually life happens. We still live in the world. You still go to parties, you still hang out with your friends, you do different things, and you're going to be presented with either these foods you've cut out or whatever that old temptation is. And if you haven't done the mindset work and you haven't figured out tools and strategies to get you through that without falling into old patterns, then you just continue this yo-yo cycle.
So talk a little bit, then you mentioned like a mindset. So if somebody's listening to this, they can still go to parties and they can still go where other people are hanging out and not be thrown by a loop for a loop.
Isn't it crazy? How is that possible, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, and that's the difference. Whenever in the past, whenever I'd be in one of my diet modes, or I'd be doing a Whole30, or I'd be doing whatever. And, I don't want to say that those don't work for people, because they absolutely do, like all the different diets. It's just, for me and for my clients and for so many people I talk to, it's not a lot of these like really restrictive diets. Of course they work. Of course they help you lose weight, but it's not sustainable for forever for your life, because it's like, okay, so for me, like I like to drink some wine. Whenever I was on a diet, like there was no alcohol, of course. Right. And that, that's just one example, but like, let's say that that's a thing you like to do. You like to have a glass of wine at dinner or with friends. And so for that 30 days or 60 days you're on the diet, you don't have any, and maybe you're fine. Maybe you're like, oh, that'd be nice. But then you are going to go to a party. Right. And so you, like I would, and many people, many women I talk to, this is exactly what they do, is you're on your diet and you kind of like hide from the world, and you're so good at it because you're not out there. But what I teach and what I encourage my clients to do is do this work when life is happening. Go to the barbecue and be uncomfortable, because you're not going to eat something you decided you're not going to eat, or go to the barbecue and make a mistake and figure out how you want to deal with that the next time it happens, right? Keep living your life. And it's all about making decisions for yourself and like learning to have your own back and be confident in commitments you're making to yourself, which is not something we're really taught.
Well, Kelsey also talked about the fact, as you said earlier, that this is sustainable. And what makes it sustainable?
So as opposed to a diet where you have a meal plan and this and that,
Right.
and you're using a lot of willpower, right? Like that's a big thing in a diet, is like you're using willpower to not eat this or not eat that. What I teach is it's all created for you. You create your own program, if you will. So of course, like you are going to have some diet changes, right? But what I offer is, okay, here are some things to look at. Here are some options for you, food wise, lifestyle wise. Like, what do you want to do about, for example, eating sugar? What do you want to do? Like, this is what intermittent fasting is. Is this something that, like, you would want to try and take on? So what the person does, what my client would do, is create their food protocol, right? But I always have something on there, like I call it a detour eat, where once a week you just eat, you pick something you want to eat and you just eat it. It could be French fries, it could be pizza, it could be chocolate cake, like whatever the thing is. The difference is you're eating that planned 24 hours, like you're planning it. You're not impulse in the moment eating. You're deciding in advance, tomorrow I'm going to have pizza and I'm going to enjoy it and I'm going to love it. I'm going to feel guilt about it. And then I'm going to go back to my normal eating. And so in terms of the sustainability of just what you're putting in your mouth, the food you're eating and everything, there's all, it being created by you, not somebody giving you something, by you saying, okay, this is how I eat. This is what I do. And really simple too. Not looking at like 80 billion things, counting macros, weighing your food, counting calories, like none of that. It's just, okay, this is what I eat. And then, so there's that, right? Food, there's that piece, your kind of food protocol. But then it's like, you need the tools, you need the strategies, the mindset work behind that, so that you can commit to that protocol. So that when you eat the pizza, when you didn't plan on eating the pizza, you can look back and say, okay, here's what I did. Here's what I was thinking. How do I want to think next time I'm in front of that pizza? I don't want to eat it because that's taking me further away from my goal, right? So how can I program new thoughts? How can I do this better next time? Like, so much about it is make some mistakes and learn from them and grow. That's how we grow, right? Is we learn from our mistakes.
One of the things that impressed me, Kelsey, about the work you do is the fact, from what I understand, that people just don't read a book or come to a seminar one time. I was very impressed with at least one part of the program is their work with you for several months on like almost a weekly basis. Is that what happens?
Yeah.
Describe that.
Yeah. So and I do group and individual coaching, but they both work pretty similar. I've structured my coaching as a program, and so it's a mixture of me teaching concepts, so different concepts around these tools. So like kind of filling your tool belt so that you have what you need to go out in the world. And then coaching, so traditional coaching of, tell me what's been going on, like tell me a problem you're having. Somebody will say, I don't know, I went to this party, something that happened or something that's reoccurring or whatever. And we coach and we talk about it. And what the coaching is, and really like the backbone behind all of this, is I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to tell you if you're doing something right or wrong or like how to do it. I'm here to show you how your brain works and how your thoughts are creating your feelings, your actions, and ultimately your results. It's all your thoughts, right? And so that's what I do. I'm like a mirror when you're talking to me and we're coaching through, a weight loss problem that you're having, or, a situation you keep running into. We talk about it and we get down to like the nitty gritty, again, the cause, not the symptom.
How helpful is it to be going through this program with other women?
I love the group aspect. When I have a group, it's so wonderful because it is like this really safe place to share, but also, some weight loss is one of those things, like in our culture, there are certain ways you talk about it. And then there's certain ways it's like kind of faux pas to talk about, right? Like we can be like at the pizza place, apparently pizza is my example today, but we can be like at the pizza place with friends and be like, oh, diet starts Monday, right? We say that all the time, but we can't say like, wow, yeah, I'm like actively losing weight and it's so great. Like that's this stigma in our culture to talk about. And so within a group program, when you have a bunch of women there, maybe some people aren't as comfortable talking about what they actually weigh or these struggles they're having, but somebody else will bring something up. And we are so alike. Like, obviously, we're all unique individuals and all of that. But when it comes to weight loss, like my coach says, like, there's no special unicorn. Like, you're not like, yes, you're a special human being and all of this, but you can lose weight just like anyone else. A lot of what with my clients say, what I've said is like, it just doesn't work for me. Like it works for everybody else. But in truth, like it does. It's just, you have to go to your brain instead of maybe like a menu of food that you have to eat, only spaghetti squash for the rest of your life or whatever that is.
Well, as you're describing it, I kind of like what I'm hearing, as opposed to, we won't mention any other groups that count points, but I just kind of like the idea that you're not locked into, it sounds like, any one best way, because I guess you'll say that everybody's different in terms of how they best lose weight.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things for sure that are great to test, but yeah, everybody's different. Be it where you're coming from. I have some clients who really have a lot of weight that they want to lose. I have some clients who are maybe trying to lose that last 5 or 10 pounds. It doesn't matter like where you're coming from, because ultimately, like losing weight, yes, it's a number on the scale, it's a size of pants, whatever it is, but it really is so much more. It's freedom, it's like it's freeing your brain from like wasting time thinking about how you look in your body, how your clothes fit you, what are people going to think, all of this. But yeah, so, and I kind of segued there, but yeah, it doesn't lock, but you're not locked into one way. It's kind of an experiment, right? I like to say to my clients, go for the lowest, most effective dose. Let's start small and get really good at honoring that commitment. So if someone wants to do one thing to start, right? Like I'll say, okay, how about, how would you like to try no sugar? Okay. And if they decide, okay, yeah, I think I'm over relying on sugar, let me look at that, right? And let's do that. Don't do no sugar, no flour, no alcohol, no potatoes, no rice. Like don't do all of that at once, right? And as you get really good at the one thing, then maybe you're like, I think I'm going to try something else, or this is working for me. I'm continuously losing weight. I'm just going to do this.
What a great bit of advice. I don't know, I hope people caught that, but I never thought of it quite in those terms. Like you said, that a while ago, Cynthia and I were cutting down on ice cream, but we did what you said, just do one thing. So we only had ice cream Sunday nights. That's the only time we have ice cream, but something we really look forward to, and it gets us past the rest of the week, But what I like what you're saying is, so you can do that and still do whatever else you're doing regularly, and then if you want to try next week something else, or talk about that, Kelsey. How long does it take for people to get into this mindset? Again, your program, which I like, goes for 10 weeks or 12 weeks?
So I have it's about 4 months.
Right, yeah.
So 16 weeks.
16,
4
yeah.
months. Yeah. So the real answer is it really depends. It depends on where you're coming from, how your brain works, all of that in terms of, when you really kind of get into it. But like one of the goals in terms of the eating piece of it is to balance out your hunger hormones. Our hunger hormones are very disrupted by concentrated foods. So things like sugar, things like wheat flour, stuff like that. That is basically, it spikes your insulin very, very high. And I won't get into all of that. I'm not a am not a dietitian or anything, but basic level, I do teach like a very basic understanding of some nutrition best practices, because it gives when we eat something like so concentrated that spikes our insulin really high, it gives us this huge dopamine hit, right? And so our primal brain, or our lower brain, whatever you call that, it thinks, ooh, I need more of this, because this is like, our brain is telling us this is good, you need this, right? As opposed to back in caveman days when we were just eating berries and getting this little hit, that was our body telling us to survive, right? Eat the food so you survive. That's why we have a dopamine hit when we eat food. It doesn't understand that chocolate cake is doing a lot more than the berries, right? And so I go into that pretty deeply in the program, but like, that's like with the food piece, there's a few things you can do that help you really balance out those hunger hormones, so that you are coming to a more natural state of hunger instead of this over desire we have, especially with like the American diet. So that can take anywhere from like 2 weeks to 6 weeks, depending on how much of that you are already having. And again, like your age, your weight, like all these different factors can play into it. But again, it's slow and steady. My program, some people drop a lot of weight very quickly. Some people don't, because it's not doing all the things and dropping 20 pounds in, a week. Like, obviously not that, but like, you're not doing that. We're doing slow, sustainable, because ultimately, if it's permanent weight loss, if you're never putting those pounds back on, and it takes 6 months, let's say it takes you 6 months to lose all the weight you wanted to lose, that's going to seem so fast when you've lost that weight, and you never have to worry about it again. Like, it's just never going to be a thing for you again, right? And so that's what I say. It's like the slowest but fastest thing you'll do.
And talk about the process, Kelsey, too, and I think you kind of are explaining it. The fact that, again, that it goes over 16 weeks points out the fact that to get into a habit, or was a habit, and you would know this, you can't do it like overnight. It takes, at least 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or it's just, I guess that's the advantage of checking in with you once a week and discussing it, because otherwise, if there's none of that reinforcement, you're just not going to do it, and I guess that's what's needed.
Yeah, well, and that's what a weightless coach, like, that's what I'm here for, right? Is to offer that out, obviously offer the tools, offer the coaching and the mindset work to help you see like why things are happening in your life. Why are you eating the pizza? Why are you doing all these things? So I'm there for that outer accountability, but my entire program is teaching you how to have inner accountability, how to learn to honor your commitments to yourself. Like, we as human beings we commit to things all the time, like fully. If you're married and you have a, exclusive relationship, like you are committed to that partner. You don't go kiss people in bars, right? Like, if you have children, you are committed to getting them to school or whatever that thing is. Like, I don't think about that stuff. It's like, that's just a commitment. But for some reason, when we're honoring these commitments we make to ourselves, we don't learn how to follow through on those. So I teach that, and I'm teaching you how to do it on your own, because my goal is you lose your weight and you don't worry about weight loss anymore. Like, if you want to keep coaching with me, I am a life coach. I'll coach with you forever, but I'm not going to leave you high and dry. But like, for my clients, it's like, no, I want to get them there. And the only way they're going to get there is, yes, the outer accountability of having a coach weekly talking to you and helping you through is great. But in the long run, it's got to be coming from you. And that's what I teach.
And talk about working with Kelsey Sanders. So, as I understand, there are two ways people can work with you. They can work with you in a group setting and talk a little bit about that, versus they can work with you individually as well.
Yep. So it just depends. Right now I'm taking individual client, and I'll form a group, occasionally here and there. It just kind of depends on the flow of things. But the programs are similar. You're getting all the same materials. There's, huge benefits to both options. Right now I'm not actively recruiting people for a group, but But yeah, open for individual clients. And it, there's a level of flexibility to it, or it's very, that you can, in the individual setting, like it's a little more like, I'm a mom of 2 kids and entrepreneur and all of this. So I understand the need to have that kind of flexibility of like scheduling when you can and all of that. And so that's a big benefit of the individual coaching.
And so we do the individual coaching. That's like we're doing now. That's over Zoom primarily.
Yep. Over Zoom. It's amazing how, you can work with anyone, anywhere, talk to anyone, anywhere. And I do over Zoom. And then I also have I'll do a Slack channel where we can communicate back and forth, and you can get coaching in between sessions that way. Like, you just write out your problem and we coach back and forth. It's also a place for my clients to post their daily writing, post, their food log, different things. So we can just, stay in communication throughout the week, even when we're not scheduled for our weekly chat.
And talk about that. So you mentioned 2 other things there. So do you ask your clients, I guess, to do 2 things? When you said a daily writing or a writing every so often?
Yeah, I definitely, and again, this is all, I offer options for people. I highly recommend writing. And this is something anyone can start doing, whether or not you're working with a coach. If you're trying to kind of get a handle on weight and you're trying to maybe lose weight, I highly recommend just write daily what you ate that day, everything, every bite. Pick a few things that are going to light you up. So like, what are you grateful for? What is your weight? Write it down every day. You can create as many prompts, it's journaling. And sometimes people are like, oh, I don't have time for that. Take 3 minutes, out of your day, write everything down that you ate. Reason being, you're collecting data. You write down everything you ate and you write down your weight every day. And the next day you look at it and you're like, interesting. I'm up 1.5 pounds and I had chips and salsa at the Mexican restaurant and a margarita. Interesting. Okay. Like, let me just look at that. It's a really easy start. I'm not saying you need to meal plan or meal prep. It's just write down what you ate. Start collecting that data.
Talk about that, Kelsey, because that's something I've always done, not necessarily writing down everything I eat, but I weigh myself every day. And some people say that's a good thing. Some people say it's a bad thing. How do you feel?
So in my opinion, I like to have my clients weigh themselves every day. We actually have an entire concept session about the scale though, because some people have no problem with it. Some people, the scale is an absolutely terrifying thing. And really what this goes to is the understanding of it's not the scale that we're scared of, it's our thoughts that we have and the meaning we are assigning to the scale, right? And so we do an entire session on that and how to make the scale neutral and how to pre-program, go into it with more neutral thoughts. Because again, the scale is just a collector of data, right? It's more complex than this, but it's basically measuring our gravitational pull and mass and like all this stuff. That's what it is, right? We don't freak out when we go to the doctor and they ask us what our height is or like our blood pressure or something, right? But suddenly the scale is like, it means so much.
It's funny, you've been reading about that or saying about that. Some people do freak out, when they go to the doctor. And some people, to me, it doesn't make sense, but they don't even want to get weighed anymore. Have you been reading about that? Or they say it's not necessary. And while I like what you said, and a buddy of mine taught me this years ago, it's just like a checkup from the neck up, that, like you said, that he doesn't panic ever. But if it's over 2 pounds either way, then he knows he has to cut down the chips and salsa or whatever. It's a great way to keep on track of things, I think. But
yeah, and it's it's data, and as you continue to collect it, you see patterns, and
right.
And weight loss is really 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like your weight it's not gonna just go down a straight diagonal. It's gonna go up a little bit. It's gonna go down based on so many factors, not just the actual stuff you ate, right? Like you have a cold and you took ibuprofen, that could inflate your weight a little bit. If you're a woman, there's a time of the month where your weight changes a little bit. If you had a really hard workout, sometimes you might see your scale go up a little bit the next day because your body's holding, there's just all these factors. So it just helps you be really informed and clear. When I have rice, the scale goes up the next day. But when I have, cauliflower rice, it doesn't. Okay, cool. I'm going to try that now. So it's just giving you that data.
Kelsey Sanders, if folks want to find out more about both your program, how to reach you, all that good stuff, talk about your website and how to get in touch with you.
Yeah. So my website is kelseycoaches.com. So KELSEY coaches.com. And you can follow me on Instagram. I do, you'll see my family and my kids and all that, but I also do a lot of posting on tips and stuff. And so that's Kelsey A. Sanders on Instagram. Again, KELSEY, lots of spellings of Kelsey. And those are really the best ways. From my website, you can reach out to me if you are interested. I do offer free consultations. So if you want to learn more about getting into a coaching relationship with me, then you can reach out to me that way, or on Instagram. I check my messages there as well.
Okay, I want to thank you. I know you offered people I know that consultation is very valuable, so thank you for that as well. And as always, a pleasure seeing you. Maybe someday I'll see you again in person. It's it's been too long, but thank you very much for being my guest on the second half hour of the Blaine's World podcast. Hope to see everybody next week, same time, same place, or whenever you're watching us. Also, thanks to my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and also to my guest the first half hour, Suzanne and Ruth on the League of Women Voters. And we'll speak to you soon. Thanks, Kelsey.